What if the mother you've been trying to heal from no longer exists? What if the pain that still whispers her name is not coming from her, but from the shadow she left inside you? Most people believe their suffering comes from the person, the memories, or the words that were said. But the truth, as Carl Jung uncovered, is far more unsettling. The real wound does not live in the outer world. It lives in the unconscious, as an emotional image, a psychic imprint. That image becomes a presence of its own, shaping your choices, your fears, your relationships. You are not fighting your mother anymore. You are fighting the echo of her, what Jung called the mother complex, a living symbol made of unmet needs and forgotten tenderness. The human psyche does not forget. It transforms pain into pattern. Every disappointment, every silence, every moment you longed for her understanding becomes part of an invisible architecture within you. And though she may be far away, even gone, the pattern keeps replaying through partners you chase, approval you seek, guilt you carry. The shadow of the mother is not a ghost of her body, but of her emotional energy, still alive in your nervous system. It whispers when you doubt yourself. It tightens your chest when you speak your truth. It makes you shrink just as you begin to rise. The pain feels personal, but it is archetypal, ancient, collective, woven into the lineage of every child who ever reached out and found absence. Healing begins the moment you recognize this truth. The story is now yours. You are the keeper of both the wound and the possibility of its transformation. Blaming her keeps you tied to the past. Forgiving her too soon may keep you from feeling what still aches. Jung said that what remains unconscious rules our life until we make it conscious. So the work is not to fix her, but to see her shadow clearly within you and to decide with quiet courage that it ends here. This is not about erasing your history. It's about reclaiming authorship over it. The mother you are still at war with is no longer the woman who raised you. She is the unhealed child that still lives inside you, waiting for someone to finally listen. That someone is you. How does a daughter become the echo of the very voice that once broke her? You swore you would never become her. You promised yourself, sometimes in silence, sometimes in rage, that you would never speak the way she did, never withhold the way she withheld, never pass down the heaviness that haunted your childhood. And yet, here you are. Maybe you've noticed it in the sharpness of your tone when your child interrupts you. Maybe it shows up in your inability to receive love without suspicion. Or maybe it's subtler, how you shrink around men like she did, or how you overextend yourself just to keep the peace, the way you watched her do every day. This is the unbearable truth of the psyche. We don't become what we admire. We become what we don't heal. Carl Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But what if fate was simply the unresolved pain of your mother, now living in your bones, your reactions, your nervous system? Trauma, especially emotional trauma passed from mother to daughter, rarely speaks in words. It speaks through mimicry, through repeated choices that don't make sense, through a feeling that no matter how far you run, you're always walking in her footsteps. That same bitterness, that same fear of abandonment, that same self-erasure in relationships. And the cruel irony is, the more you resist becoming her, the deeper you sink into the identity formed by that resistance. Because resistance is not freedom, it's still an attachment. Many women live this inherited loop without realizing it. You may have been raised by a mother who was emotionally unavailable, overly critical, or even silently resentful of her own motherhood. And instead of breaking the cycle, you may now find yourself emotionally numb, overly self-critical, or subconsciously resenting your own needs. These are not random traits. They are survival strategies passed down like heirlooms in the feminine lineage. But unlike jewelry or recipes, they don't nourish. They drain. They confuse love with sacrifice, strength with suppression, and boundaries with guilt. So here is the soul-wrenching truth. Healing begins where the illusion ends. You must give up the fantasy that one day she will apologize, that the love you longed for will somehow retroactively arrive, that if you suffer just a little longer, you will finally be enough. You must let the dream die so you can be reborn without it. You are not here to fix your mother's story. You are here to rewrite your own. And so the question becomes, who are you when you are no longer loyal to your wound? Let that question stir something deep in you. Let it invite reflection in the comments. Have you seen your mother in yourself? What's the hardest part of letting go of the woman you were trained to become? What would it feel like to live as the woman you were born to be? The healing starts when you stop waiting. It deepens when you stop blaming. It transforms when you begin choosing. Have you ever wondered how many years of your life have been spent waiting for an apology that never came? For many, the ache isn't just in the heart. It's in the nervous system, in the decisions not taken, in the words choked back, in the self abandoned over and over again in hope of being chosen by the one who never could. What makes this so painful is not just the absence of love, but the hope that one day it might appear. Maybe this birthday will be different. That maybe one morning she'll call and say everything you needed to hear. That maybe, just maybe, she'll finally see you. But what if she never does? This is the turning point that defines real healing. The moment you stop waiting for her to change and begin the work of rebuilding yourself from the inside out. Not because she is unworthy of love, but because the child within you has waited long enough. This is the threshold Carl Jung described when he spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are by separating from the projections, illusions, and unmet needs inherited from others. In this case, the unmet need for a nurturing mother becomes a spiritual wound that echoes through every relationship, every silence, every inner war. How many of your relationships have mirrored her absence? How often have you overgiven, over-explained, or over-apologized in the hope that someone would stay, simply because she didn't? This isn't a flaw in you, it's a scar, a survival strategy, a script written before you even knew how to speak. But what Jung helps us understand is that healing doesn't begin when she changes. It begins when you stop expecting her to. When you end the unconscious contract that says, I will not be whole until she sees me. What would your life look like if you reclaimed that energy? There's a sacred grief in this letting go. A mourning not only of the mother you had, but the mother you imagined. And in this grieving, something holy begins to emerge. Self-parenting. The ability to sit with your own pain and hold yourself tenderly. The strength to say, I believe in me, I trust my pain, I don't need permission to heal anymore. This is not about pretending she didn't hurt you. It's about finally telling yourself the truth and making peace with the possibility that she may never tell it back. Think about the people you know who are quietly thriving after years of emotional neglect. That woman who decided to become her own safe space, starting every morning with journaling and stillness. That man who chose therapy after decades of silence, not because he hated his mother, but because he loved himself enough to break the chain. That middle-aged woman who finally said, enough, and created a life where she didn't have to explain her wounds. because she no longer needed others to validate them. They aren't just healing, they are living proof that you don't need someone else to become who you were, always meant to be. So what are you still waiting for? If the answer is her love, her apology, her transformation, pause and breathe. What if she never gives it? Could you still be free? Could you still reclaim your joy, your worth, your power? Carl Jung would say yes, because the journey toward wholeness isn't about fixing the mother, it's about ending the war within the child, the part of you that still thinks someone else holds the key to your peace, when in truth, the key was always yours. And maybe that's what healing truly is, not needing her to say sorry, to finally believe that you deserve everything she couldn't give. What would happen if you stopped waiting? Let that question echo through you. What if the very love you were raised with is the same force quietly holding you back? It sounds impossible, doesn't it? But buried deep in many hearts is a silent, sacred promise. I won't outshine you, Mother. It's a vow no one remembers making, but many live by. A vow that quietly governs their choices, sabotages their joy, and dims their light. If your mother never found peace, how dare you live in joy? If she never healed, how can you thrive without guilt? This is the unspoken inheritance passed down in countless families, the invisible contract of unconscious loyalty. And Carl Jung warned us, what is unconscious will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. It often begins innocently. You grow up watching her suffer in silence, self-sacrifice, or feel trapped in a life she never chose. Maybe she was emotionally distant, or maybe she gave everything but never gave herself joy. And as a child, your deepest wish is to help her. So you internalize a strange kind of devotion, to stay close to her pain, to carry her sadness as if it were your own, to prove your love by repeating her patterns. You mistake staying small for staying loyal. You learn to dim your light, not because you want to, but because shining might feel like betrayal. This wound is especially sharp in adulthood. You hesitate to celebrate your wins. You feel a strange guilt when love arrives, when abundance flows, when you feel peace. Some part of you wonders if you're abandoning her emotionally by evolving. If she was unloved, why should you be loved? If she was afraid, why should you be fearless? And worst of all, when you try to leave those patterns behind, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like abandonment. So you stay. You stay emotionally available to her pain long after she's gone. You stay in relationships that feel familiar but unfulfilling. You stay in cycles of self-sabotage, low self-worth, or chronic guilt, not because you're weak, but because you're loyal. But here's the paradox. You do not honor your mother by repeating her pain. You honor her by healing what she couldn't. You don't betray her by growing beyond her limitations. You fulfill the dream she never had the chance to live. Jung called this the process of individuation, the sacred journey of becoming your true self, even when it requires releasing inherited suffering. It's not an act of rebellion, it's an act of love, because every wound healed in you becomes one less wound passed down. Still, this raises soul-deep questions. What if the guilt you feel isn't yours but hers? What if your anxiety is really an echo of her fear? What if your silence is her voice still speaking through you? And what if the most radical thing you could do is this? Forgive her suffering, release her story, and become the version of her that she never had the chance to be? Can you allow yourself to evolve, not to escape her, but to set both of you free? Let's talk about this. Below, have you ever felt this silent pressure not to surpass your mother's happiness? What has helped you begin breaking free from that invisible contract? What if the woman you've spent your entire life idolizing, resenting, or desperately trying to please was never the powerful goddess or the cruel villain your psyche painted her to be, but simply a deeply wounded human being? One who never got to meet her own soul because the world never gave her permission? What if her silence wasn't indifference but exhaustion? What if her harsh words weren't the truth but the echoes of trauma? Too often we carry the image of a mother not as she was, but as our inner child needed her to be, and that gap between who she was and who we hoped for becomes the wound we keep bleeding from. Maybe your mother wasn't there when your heart broke for the first time. Maybe she dismissed your tears when you needed comfort the most. Or maybe she hovered over every decision you made, projecting her fear as control. And here you are now, 35, 40, 55, still wondering why you feel guilty for resting, ashamed of wanting more, afraid of being fully seen. You've outgrown the house, the rules, the chores, but the inner courtroom remains. Her voice, now internalized, doesn't need to speak anymore. It lives in the way you second-guess your joy. It shows up in the way you sabotage love. It echoes in the way you shrink when it's time to shine. Carl Jung spoke of the mother complex, not as blame, but as a map. A psychic imprint formed through our earliest interactions with the feminine. If our mother were cold, the inner mother becomes critical. If she were enmeshed, the inner mother becomes suffocating. We mistake these inherited voices as ours, not realizing we're still reacting to a dynamic that no longer exists externally, but rules us internally. We are not rebelling against our mothers. We are imprisoned by the archetypes we have not yet confronted within. You don't need to sever ties to feel free. You need to identify the image you've attached to motherhood. The fantasy of the mother who saves, the fear of the mother who judges, the longing for the mother who finally sees you. These archetypal projections keep your pain alive. Because every time you do something bold, that unconscious mother within might whisper, "Who do you think you are?" And every time you want to rest, she may sneer, "You haven't done enough." That voice is not your mother. It's the symbol of how your nervous system adapted to her. So what now? Do you keep repeating her life to stay loyal? Do you keep diminishing your light so she doesn't feel left behind? Or do you begin the deeper act of healing, not by rewriting her story, but by writing your own? What if you could become the mother you never had, not to others, but to yourself? Not as a performance, but as a quiet revolution. Not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. What would change if your inner mother stopped criticizing and started holding you? You don't need a new mother. You need a new relationship with the feminine inside you, one that doesn't belittle, abandon, or betray. One that nurtures without rescuing, sees without suffocating, and guides without shaming. This is the psychological rite of passage Jung called individuation, the sacred separation from inherited roles and the birth of your authentic self. So tell me, what archetype are you still carrying that no longer fits the person you are becoming? Are you ready to break up with the mother in your mind, not to punish the woman who raised you, but to finally meet the woman you are here to be? Let the healing begin where the fantasy ends. What if the love you keep chasing is really the love you were meant to give yourself? Not the conditional kind you were taught to earn, but the kind you were never taught to even recognize. There comes a moment in every adult life, often quietly and without warning, when we realize something devastating. No one is coming to save us. Not the ideal partner, not the long-awaited apology, not even the parent who failed us. And in that sobering stillness, we are left with one terrifying and liberating truth. We must become the inner parent we never had. Think about how many times you've abandoned yourself. When your body begged for rest, but you kept pushing through. When your heart cracked open, but you told yourself to get over it. When you made yourself small so someone else could feel comfortable. These aren't just random choices. They are echoes of a deeper wound, the wound of emotional neglect, the kind that doesn't leave visible scars, but writes itself into the nervous system, into your very sense of worthiness. And unless we tend to it consciously, we begin to perpetuate it. We become the very voice that once wounded us. Carl Jung called this repetition complex activation. The unhealed parts of our psyche form clusters, emotional knots tied to memory, fear, and identity. These complexes become our default reactions. If our inner child grew up unseen, the adult we become might hide in overachievement. If we were constantly criticized, we might sabotage intimacy before someone else can. What was once done to us, we now do to ourselves. Not because we are weak, but because the psyche is loyal. It recreates what is familiar, even if it hurts. So how do we break the cycle? Not by waging war on our past, but by learning to mother ourselves in the present. This is not a sentimental cliché. It is an act of radical maturity. It is sitting with your inner child when they cry and saying, "I hear you." It is protecting your energy when you feel drained. It is not waiting for someone else to grant you permission to rest, to celebrate, to choose yourself. It is relearning how to exist without constantly seeking validation. It is becoming a safe home for the parts of you that never had one. Imagine waking up and instead of asking, "Who will love me today?" you ask, "How can I love myself today without performance, without earning it?" That question is a revolution, because the one who was abandoned must become the one who returns. The one who was silenced must become the one who listens. The one who was criticized must become the one who protects. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are right on time for your own rebirth. And yes, it will feel unfamiliar. At first, self-kindness might feel like weakness. Slowing down might trigger guilt. Joy might feel suspicious. But these are just echoes of a past rhythm, not truth. Keep going. Keep showing up. Because each time you respond to yourself with compassion, you rewire the narrative. You end the emotional inheritance. You begin a new lineage, not of perfection, but of presence. So I'll ask you, what does the child in you need to hear today? And can you be the one to say it? What if you became the mother figure who never once rolled her eyes at your dreams, who never withheld affection when you failed, who never made your joy feel like a threat? What if you stopped waiting to be chosen and chose yourself again and again until it no longer felt like a rebellion, but like a return? You do not have to fix the past, but you can stop repeating it. And that, Jung would say, is not only healing, it is individuation. It is the sacred becoming of who you truly are, beyond all roles, beyond all wounds. Begin now. The child in you has waited long enough. What if healing is not about returning to who you were before the pain, but about becoming someone new because of it? This is the quiet revolution, the final turn inward, the sacred threshold where you stop trying to fix the past and start becoming the future, where you recognize that your job was never to be the child your mother needed. Your job now is to become the adult your inner child has been waiting for. And in doing so, something ancient ends with you. A pattern dissolves, a lineage begins again. You are no longer bound to repeat what wounded you. The moment you see the pattern is the moment you are no longer ruled by it. That pattern could be emotional abandonment, perfectionism, people-pleasing, rage turned inward, or shame wrapped in silence. And maybe for years you told yourself it was normal. That's just how life is. That's just how love feels. But deep down, a quieter truth has been whispering through the cracks. That something is off. That your soul remembers a gentler way. That you were not meant to be defined by survival. You were meant to evolve. Carl Jung believed that healing is not about becoming perfect, but about becoming whole. And wholeness requires that you live with awareness. You do not erase your wounds. You carry them like sacred scars, not as proof of your weakness, but as symbols of your initiation. The pain you inherited is not your fault, but the way you carry it forward is now your choice, and that is where the power returns. In that moment when you say, "This ends with me," imagine what it means to no longer chase the illusion of being enough, to stop performing for approval that never satisfies, to release the endless hustle for someone else's love, and instead root into your own presence. This is not selfishness. This is soul reclamation. When you stop abandoning yourself, you send a message not just backward through your lineage, but forward into the future. You say, "It is safe now. It is safe to feel. It is safe to be. It is safe to choose yourself." And something changes. Your nervous system softens. Your decisions become clearer. The energy you used to spend hiding or proving now fuels your becoming. You speak with more truth. You rest without guilt. You connect without losing yourself. And in that transformation, others feel it too. The people around you begin to feel your boundaries, not as walls, but as light. You no longer attract chaos. You radiate clarity. This is the deep, invisible work, the kind no one applauds, the kind that doesn't trend but transforms. It happens in the early mornings when you choose presence over panic, in the quiet nights when you forgive yourself again, in the mirror when you look into your own eyes and say, "You are enough," and for the first time, you mean it. You are the end of the pattern, the soft disruptor of generations of noise, the one who chose consciousness over comfort, love over loyalty to pain. Depth in a shallow world is its own kind of light. And now you carry it forward, not to change the past, but to become the future that never had a name until you spoke it. Let it be you. Let it begin here. Let it be the love you never received, finally returning home. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.